Chapter 13. God's Army of Worshippers. When the scriptures refer to the heavenly host, we usually think of choirs of angels. The word host in the Bible meant army. Luke 2:13. Let us perceive that the host of heaven are worshiping armies. Indeed, no one can do warfare who is not first a worshiper of God. Indeed, no one can do warfare who is not first a worshiper of God. The central issue in tribulation, worship. One does not have to penetrate deeply into the revelation of John to discover that both God and the devil are seeking worshipers. Revelation 14:7, 7:11, 13:4, and 14:11. Time and time again, the line is drawn between those who worship the beast and his image and those who worship God. Let us realize beforehand that in the last great battle before Jesus returns, the outcome of every man's life shall be weighed upon a scale of worship in the midst of warfare and battles. To whom will we bow, God or Satan? Yet while this warfare shall culminate in the establishment of the Lord's kingdom on earth, Revelation 11:15, we must realize the essence of this battle is the central issue in our warfare today. Will we faithfully worship God during satanic assault and temptation? True worship must emerge now in the context of our daily lives, for no man will worship through the great battles of tomorrow who complains in the mere skirmishes of today. No man will worship through the great battles of tomorrow who complains in the mere skirmishes of today. You will remember that the Lord's call to Israelites was a call to worship and service before him in the wilderness. Exodus 5:3 and 7:16. Indeed, when Moses first spoke of God's loving concern, we read that the Hebrews bowed low and worshipped. Exodus 4:31. But when trials or pressures came, they fell quickly into murmuring, complaining, and blatant rebellion. Their worship was superficial, a form without a heart of worship. This same condition of shallow worship prevails in much of Christianity today. If a message is given that speaks of the Lord's great care for his people with eagerness, do we bow low in worship? But as soon as the pressures of daily living arises, or temptations come, how quickly we rebel against God and resist his dealings. The enemy has easy access to the soul that is not protected by true worship of God. God's purpose in the wilderness was to perfect true worship, which is based upon the reality of God, not circumstances. The Lord knows that the heart that will worship him in the wilderness of affliction will continue to worship in the promised land of plenty. Without true worship of God, there can be no victory in warfare. Without true worship of God, there can be no victory in warfare. For what we bleed when we are wounded by satanic assault or difficult circumstances is the true measure of our worship. You see, what comes out of our hearts during times of pressure was in us but hidden during times of ease. If you are a true worshiper, your spirit will exude worship to God no matter what battle you are fighting. In warfare, worship is a wall around the soul. Listen, protecting your heart through worship. Most of us understand the basic dynamics of the human soul. We have been taught, and rightly so, that the soul is the combination of our mind, will, and emotions. Generally speaking, when the enemy comes against the church, he targets any of these three areas. Satan attacks one of these three areas. We must see that the protection of these areas is of vital importance in our war against Satan. Let me say it again: the mind, the will, and the emotions. We must see that the protection of these areas is of vital importance in our war against Satan. To further illuminate the nature of this battle, let us add something to our definition of the soul. Generally speaking, the essence of who we are is made of events and how we responded to those events. Who we are today is the sum of what we have encountered in life and our subsequent reactions to that. Abuses and afflictions hammer us one way. Encouragement and praise inflates us another. Our reaction to each event, whether that event was positive or negative, is poured into the creative marrow of our individuality. Listen, where it is blended into the nature of our character. What we call memory is actually our spirit gazing at the substance of our soul. With few exceptions, those events which we remember the most have shaped us the most. Indeed, the reason our natural minds cannot forget certain incidents is because those experiences have literally become a part of our nature. We are what the past has made us, yet we are commanded to not look back and to forget those things which are behind. Philippians 3:13, Luke 9:62, Hebrews 11:15. Let me say it again. We are what the past has made us, yet we are commanded to not look back and to forget those things which are behind. With God, this is not impossible, for although the events of our lives are irreversible, our reactions to those events can still be changed. And as our reactions change, we change. In other words, although we cannot alter the past, we can put our past up on the altar as an act of worship. See? We cannot alter the past, but we can put our past up on the altar. A worshiping heart truly allows God to restore the soul. All of us receive a portion of good, both good and evil, in this world. But for life to be good, God, who is the essence of life, must reach into our experiences and redeem us from our negative reactions. The channel through which the Lord extends himself, even into our past, is our love and worship of him. And we know that God causes all things to work together for good for those who love God, Romans 8:28. The key for the fulfillment of this verse is that we become lovers of God in our spirits. When we are given to loving him, all that we have passed through in life is washed in that love. It is redeemed and becomes good within us. Therefore, it is essential to both the salvation of our souls and our protection in warfare that we be worshipers. Listen, for the ark which safely carries us through adversity is worship. The ark which safely carries us through adversity is worship. Psalm 84 expresses in praise to God the wonderful effect worship has upon the soul. How blessed is the man whose strength is in thee, in whose heart are the highways to Zion, passing through the valley of Baca, weeping. They make it a spring. They make it a spring. The early rain also covers it with blessings. Verses 5 and 6. If you are ever praising God, verse 4, your worship of God will will transform the negative assault of the enemy into a spring of sweet water which will refresh you. No matter what befalls a worshiper, their valley of weeping always becomes a spring covered with blessings. You cannot successfully engage in warfare nor pass safely through the wilderness of this life without first becoming a worshiper of God. Worship the purpose of creation. Listen, worship the purpose of creation. I hope I'm helping you. We were created for God's pleasure. We were not created to live for ourselves, but for Him. And while the Lord desires that we enjoy His gifts and His people, He would have us know we were created first for His pleasure. In these closing moments of this age, the Lord will have a people whose purpose for living is to please God with their lives. In them, God finds His own reward for creating man. They are His worshipers. They are on earth only to please God, and when He is pleased, they also are pleased. The Lord takes them farther and through more pain and conflict than other men. Listen, the Lord takes them farther and through more pain and conflicts than other men. Outwardly, they often seem smitten of God and afflicted, Isaiah 53:4. Yet to God they are His beloved. When they are crushed like the petals of a flower, they exude a worship, the fragrance of which is so beautiful and rare that angels weep in quiet awe at their surrender. They are the Lord's purpose for creation. Listen, one would think that God would protect them, guarding them in such a way that they would not be marred. Instead, they are marred more than other men. Indeed, the Lord seems pleased to crush them, putting them to grief. For in the midst of their physical and emotional pain, their loyalty to Christ grows pure and perfect. And in the face of persecutions, their love and worship toward God becomes all-consuming. Would that all Christ's servants were so perfectly surrendered, yet God finds His pleasure in all us. But as the days of the kingdom draws near and the warfare at the end of this age increases, those who have been created solely for the worship of God will come forth in the power and glory of the Son. With the high praises of God in their mouth, they will execute upon His enemies the judgment written, Psalm 149. They will lead as generals in the Lord's army of worshipers.